Hello, I'm Joseph Dillard. Welcome to the Ideal Video Curricula. In this video, I want to review some of the reasons to learn and practice integral deep listening. At this point in the evolution of humanity, we know quite a bit about what works and doesn't work to support individual, societal, and environmental health and prosperity. IDL addresses and supports many of those strengths while ameliorating many of those weaknesses. We now know a great deal about the familial and socio-cultural scripting, cognitive distortions, biases, logical fallacies, and tendencies toward drama that destroy lives and undercut problem solving. Yet we continue with our addictions and movement toward societal collapse. Why? IDEO believes it is because we are out of touch with the priorities of our life compass, or find them less important than our personal and socio-cultural priorities. We know that focusing on the accumulation of wealth, power, and status is addictive. IDEO believes that when children are taught to access and follow the priorities of their life compass, they are much less likely to form addictions, and that this strategy of prevention is far superior, since personal addictions and societal customs and laws, once they are formed, are very difficult to break or change. We also know that it doesn't work to prioritize short-term gain, like that provided by our addictions, over long-term stability, because that also leads to personal collapse. And if the addictions are societal, such as the quest for personal gain and profit over the collective good, that leads to societal collapse. By focusing on the priorities of our emerging potentials and our life compass, integral deep listening emphasizes long-term stability and reduces the likelihood of both personal and social collapse. Integral deep listening encourages meritocracy, that is, the rewarding and empowering of excellence. It just doesn't believe in doing so at the expense of overall personal and collective balance. We know that focusing on individual aptitudes or excellence in specific lines like intelligence or charisma, spirituality, or science, to the detriment of overall balance, is a mistake because it causes us to ignore or neglect our weaknesses, which at some point leads to collapse. However, society rewards excellence, not balance, which it regards as mediocrity. The result is that society creates unbalanced individuals, generally people with high cognitive, charismatic, sports or arts lines, and low or ignored health and moral lines. Chasing approval, money, power, or enlightenment are common examples. The result is developmental imbalance, leading to personal collapse. If enough individuals collapse, society as a whole collapses. IDL minimizes or avoids this problem by identifying those areas that most block our development and strengthening them, while accessing emerging potentials that are most likely to bring us into balance. We also know it doesn't work to prioritize profit for ourselves or for our colleagues, such as fellow shareholders, over the collective good. That's because a neglect of the common good invariably leads to societal collapse. Integral deep listening teaches the benefit of focusing on the collective good through demonstrating the benefits we receive by prioritizing what is good for intrasocial collectives. If you're not familiar with the term intrasocial, there is a video in this curriculum that explains this important concept. There is another important reason why prioritizing wealth, accumulation, status, approval, and power doesn't work. Doing so leaves us in a psychologically insecure position, since wealth, status, and power are intrinsically tenuous and inherently subject to vanishing overnight. Ideal avoids this problem by creating the peace of mind that comes from focusing on the priorities of our life compass. We also know that while relationships are based on respect, reciprocity, trustworthiness, and empathy, our relationships often lack these important qualities. Why? Ideal believes it is due to two basic reasons. The first is that society often does not reward these behaviors. In fact, it sometimes creates disincentives that block their development. Respect of opponents is often ignored in personal, business, and geopolitical arenas. When law is not equally applied to all, reciprocity is ignored. When the powerful are advantaged at the expense of the weak, trust is undermined. When people gain power through power, not through respect or empathy, then empathy is ignored and diminished. A second reason why our relationships often lack these important qualities is because we have not learned to respect, demonstrate reciprocity, trustworthiness, and empathy toward our intrasocial collectives through interviewing imaginal elements and testing their recommendations in our daily lives. Because our intrasocial relationships are unhealthy, we have trouble discriminating between healthy and unhealthy social relationships, compromising ourselves and rationalizing away our selling out and kissing up. We know the limits of egotism, yet it remains widespread because it has strong personal and social adaptive benefits. We also know the limits of exceptionalism and elitism, yet we reward it because we both admire and need excellence. How do we deal with such paradoxes? Ideal teaches that an important part of the answer is to encourage and reward identification with the perspectives of both social and intrasocial others, to experience different needs, beliefs, worldviews, and priorities. Many people around the world currently recognize the importance of understanding others at a deeper level, and social media is a historic advancement in this capacity. However, very few people at present recognize the importance of understanding the perspectives and priorities of emerging potentials, and they lack familiarity with a methodology with which to do so. Ideal teaches this ability and provides such a methodology. Here are some of our other personal and collective deficits that Ideal addresses. We can go to the moon, but we don't understand our dreams. Ideal teaches that. We can objectively view the Earth from space, but we rarely view ourselves objectively. Ideal teaches that skill. We don't know how to differentiate the 95% of false alarms and hyped fears from the 5% of alarms that are real and that can kill us. Ideal teaches that. What we don't know is how to integrate the dream state with our waking awareness. Ideal teaches that. We also don't know how to access transpersonal states when we want and need to. Ideal teaches that. What we also don't know is how to access emerging potentials and our own unique life compass. Ideal teaches that. While we know a great deal about accessing abstract, formless objectivity by way of meditation, we don't know how to access subjective, but practical and invested, subjective sources of objectivity. Ideal teaches that. We lack a method to reliably access the perspectives of our emerging potentials in order to improve our decision-making and problem-solving. Ideal teaches that. We also don't know how to demonstrate respect toward the interior and imaginal and why doing so is important, since our external and interior realities tend to mirror each other. IDEAL teaches that. We also don't know how to make pre-personal emotion, pre-rational emotion, worldviews, beliefs, assumptions, and mythologies serve both rationality and transrationality. IDEAL teaches that. We don't know how to differentiate sources of indeterminate ontology from self-aspects and the purely subjective. IDEAL teaches that. Let me explain. What we don't usually recognize is the large gray area between ourselves and others, or how something can be a self-aspect and still be objective, or be an objective other and still be a self-aspect. This is something that IDEAL calls indeterminate ontology, and it is important because it keeps us from committing two huge mistakes. When we reduce everything and everyone to parts of ourselves in order to take responsibility for our lives, we deprive the other of autonomy and respect, collapsing our world into solipsism. When we objectify all experience, on the other hand, and ignore our own part in creating it, we deny our responsibility and disempower ourselves, because what happens to us is due to something outside of us: fate, predestination, dharma, karma, God's will, or some other factor beyond our control. IDEAL addresses this fundamental problem by teaching both the subjectivity and autonomy of imaginal elements. This allows us to find a balance between taking responsibility and recognizing the responsibility and autonomy of both social and intersocial others. We also need better ways to move into a healthy relationship with death and dying. IDEAL teaches that. We need better ways to recognize and move out of self-inflicted, needless, dysfunctional drama. IDEAL teaches that. We all know about the importance of respect, reciprocity, trustworthiness, and empathy toward others. But how much do we practice these toward ourselves? IDEAL teaches that. All of us want intimacy and authenticity in our relationships, but how many of us achieve them? IDEAL teaches that. We are only as mentally sick as our secrets, delusions, and false assumptions. IDEAL teaches their surfacing and tabling. We need better ways to communicate with each other beyond and beneath our own superficial and scripted self-image. Integral deep listening teaches intimate communication based on what is authentic within ourselves. We are often our own worst enemies. Do we know how to become our own best friends? IDEAL teaches that. We know how to listen to and follow parents, teachers, leaders, experts, and gurus. Do we know how to find and follow our own unique, innate life compass? IDEAL teaches that. We have all sorts of theories and ideas about how to raise our kids. Do we know how to listen deeply in an integral way to our children's own life compass and teach them how to do the same? IDEAL teaches that. We all know our habits, preferences, beliefs, opinions, and worldviews. Do we know those of our own emerging potentials? IDEAL teaches that. We are all becoming increasingly cognitively multi-perspectival as we connect worldwide by way of social media. However, few of us know how to become experientially multi-perspectival and use that skill set to further our own individual and collective development. IDEAL teaches that. There are many other approaches that teach these things as well. IDEAL is unusual in that it puts them all, and more, together in one approach. Do you have questions or comments? Leave them below after this video or at Friends of IDL on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. You will find the entire IDL video curricula at integraldeeplistening.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.